Iguodala. Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. The three, steps back, crossover, puts up a three. Rebound James. Second. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions. Cleveland, this is for you.
What's going on, Cavs fans? Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Block, the Shot, the Stop, a Cleveland Cavaliers podcast covering our favorite topic, Cleveland Cavaliers. We're getting ever so close to the NBA season. He's Kevin Lynch. I'm Skylar Webker. And Kevin, October can't come soon enough.
I know we are in the doldrums right now, my man. But before you know it, basketball will be right around the corner. Had a little bit of fall weather in the Chicago area where I am this past week. And I know it gets a lot of people thinking about football, but it gets me thinking about the beginning of the basketball season.
Yeah, where I am in Columbus, it was football season because Buckeyes kicking off and everything. So that cool weather is just, it gets you excited. It gets you ready for football and basketball and ready for the baseball season to be over with.
That is right.
So, Kevin, I heard through the grapevine that you had a little party, went to a little party.
Yeah, I want to get this out of the way at the top, so thank you for giving me that. So I need to make a I already made the confession to Skylar and Tim, but I want to make it to all of our Cavs friends out there. I accidentally ended up at a Chicago Bulls party. And when I say accident, I truly mean that. So my daughter just started kindergarten. The PTO at her new school was doing a fundraiser, and all I knew was the party was 90s on 9th Avenue. It turned out to be a block party, bunch of different houses, had a different 90s theme. It was great. But I showed up to one of the houses and it was all Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls, like apparel everywhere. They're playing highlights of the 96 finals. They're playing the Bulls intro song, which is annoying, but it's also like the most fire intro song in all of sports still. You have to admit. And I did, and I didn't have fun. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't keep any of the souvenirs they gave me. But I just want to confess to Cavs Nation that I'm sorry. It was an accident. It won't happen again. But no, I'm obviously being facetious. Shout out to 7th Avenue PTOs. Really, really fun party. Great people, even in Chicago. Nice to just be around basketball fans talking hoops in August.
You could say you're still a card-carrying member of the Isaac Okoro fan club. That's right.
Yeah, I actually did have a couple conversations about that trade, and none of the Bulls fans liked it. Put it that way.
The Bulls are in a weird spot, as we've well documented on this show, with you being in Chicago and Tim being a former Bulls fan. They're kind of in a weird spot. But to be honest, the Cavs are going to start the season in a weird spot. News has come out that Max Strus has underwent a knee surgery here in the offseason and is not to be returned within 3 to 4 months. So kind of on that same timetable as Darius Garland. And Kevin, the season hasn't even started, and this team is losing key members of this team, with Garland being out with the toe surgery and now Max being out with the knee surgery. How are you feeling as far as we've taken off this season?
So it's obviously not great news. If there's a silver lining, and it's the best silver lining in all of sports, thank goodness they're in the Eastern Conference, because they could very much still hold their own, do really well while they're waiting for those guys to come back. But yeah, I mean, anytime you're down 2 starters, one of which is your all-star point guard, the other who is probably your main glue guy kind of on the team in Strus, it's not great. And the depth was one of, if not the Cavs' biggest strength last year, and that'll be tested a little bit. We were talking before the show, they lost Isaac Okoro, who had an up and down season but did fill in well at times when guys were out. And obviously Ty Jerome, finalist for 6th man of the year, filled in so well in the limited amount of time that they were missing, Darius or Donovan or anything. So the depth is really going to be tested, but, and you especially as a positive guy, I'll give you a positive thing. Like you could tell yourself the story like this could be for the better because maybe they'll be a little bit fresher towards the end of the season, and like you'll work in some guys at the beginning of the year in the rotation that can get some experience, and maybe this will all be good for the Cavs. Like I said, you never want two of your guys with lower leg injuries coming into the year, but again, thank goodness they're in the Eastern Conference, and if it's going to happen, better to happen now than in March.
Yeah, for sure. I took a look at the schedule, and they only have 7 teams against Western Conference opponents.
Yeah.
And Western Conference opponents includes teams like the Suns and the Trailblazers that aren't totally there and competitive yet. So you're right. It's good that they're in the East and still favored to win the East, especially with all of the torn Achilles around the East. I think it definitely helps having some guys, get healthy and stuff. I am curious on how much that'll affect any type of conditioning.
Sure.
Because we saw that this Cavs team was super healthy all year and they can play. I mean, Kenny Atkinson keeps the minutes limited throughout the whole season, but I think that was a key attribute why everybody was able to play 70-80% of the games last year is because of having that stamina to do so. And I'm curious how that'll affect these two guys, especially the higher piece of it all, Darius Garland, who we're definitely going to lean on way more than I would say we're going to lean on Max Strus.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of deja vu for Max, right? He got hurt in the preseason last year and didn't. I think he made his debut right around the end of December, beginning of January, if I remember correctly. And he had a very uneven first month. He had a couple really good games. I think he played really good against the Thunder. I remember in the game that they beat the Thunder. But was very uneven the first month, and then there was a couple other minor injuries that kind of got him back into the starting lineup, and then he kind of was Max Strus again. So the hope is with Max, while it's not ideal to be injured going into the season 2 years in a row, it kind of works out the way it did last year.
Yeah, no doubt. I think unfortunate, like been there, done that before. But I think they'll bring him back and have him coming off of the bench. I think they're going to start the season with probably the starting unit being Donovan Mitchell, Sam Merrill, Hunter at 3, and then have Ball continue to be off the bench and let him, he unfortunately can't raise his minutes, or you don't want to raise his minutes when there are injuries.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the main guys that there's a few kind of guys that I said this is going to affect the most. It's going to affect the first person I wrote down is Donovan Mitchell, because Donovan is going to have to play a little bit more point guard than he normally does, just because the lack of ball handling they're going to have. This team has less ball handling than it did last year, and that's before Garland goes down. So he's going to have to play a little bit more point guard, do a little bit more playmaking. I'm sure they'll, manage his minutes and everything, but could be a little bit more taxing on him to start the year. The other guys I wrote down, the 2 guys I think it matters the most for are Craig Porter Jr. and then Jalen Tyson, because I think those are the 2 guys that are kind of fringe rotation or towards the back end of the rotation that now become firmly in the rotation for that first 6 to 10 weeks of the season that they're missing these guys. I mean, I don't think either of them are going to start, but I think they're both going to be counted on to play 15 plus minutes a game. And I think they're both very capable of being good to great contributors off the bench on this team. But they're both, still young and a little raw. So, you're probably, what you hope is that they step up and play really well and play through some mistakes, because they're going to make mistakes as young players. But those are the 3 guys I thought it would affect the most. Did you have anybody else, or what do you think of that?
I'm curious on I could put these guys in just as, I'm going to say Evan Mobley and Jared Allen.
Okay.
Because we saw last year there was kind of a tandem connection between Darius Garland and Jared Allen, and then kind of the rotations would hit and it would be Donovan Mitchell pairing with Evan Mobley. I'm curious to see how that kind of rotational piece happens. I'm also curious to see maybe an evolution into that Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley chemistry, especially with Donovan Mitchell at the 1. What kind of facilitation that helps and that growth, I would say.
Yeah.
And Donovan Mitchell has been outspoken on that. Evan Mobley needs to be the outspoken person on this team.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think I looked at it as like whose role might change. I think Evan would have had to be that regardless of these two guys going down. I think he needs, I think it's kind of his year to fully ascend into one of the best players in the league, the best player on this team, and regardless of who else might be in or out. And so, yeah, I mean, it obviously when a couple of key guys are out, it's going to affect everybody. It's going to affect, Sam Merrill is going to go from a bench role to a starting role and probably see his minutes increase. So it affects him. I think no matter who gets hurt, they're not going to change Lonzo Ball's role. I think they're going to play him a strict amount of minutes and a strict amount of games regardless. But yeah, I mean, I think when, hopefully this turns into an opportunity that could, kind of have some silver lining for the Cavs, because you never want to. I'm not going to sit here and say that Darius Garland and Max Strus being out is a good thing.
No, and thankfully, I mean, the piece that we have banked on year after year is the continuity of this team. So I do think when these guys come back in, it will be a lot like kind of plug and play. So I'm not worried about when these guys get reintroduced to the team. I am curious on how Kenny Atkinson addresses rotational minutes, those chemistry pairings that he found last year. I'm curious on those pieces, and I agree with you that they're not changing Lonzo Ball's role. He's finite minutes, doing what we need him to do. I love him off the bench. We've been pretty vocal about that, but I don't want him starting. I don't want him. I don't want to push him 35 minutes a game. So
no, he won't be around very long if you do, I don't think. Well, I think that's a good pivot to, the other guy we're going to talk about is Darius Garland. We obviously been doing all these like kind of bigger player profiles on each of the Cavs. We're kind of holding off on Darius till we found out a little bit more about his injury. Hard to do a whole player profile when you don't know when they're going to be playing, right? But with that said, I mean, Darius obviously had a career year last year. I mean, the numbers, 21 points, 7 rebounds, the efficiencies off the charts, like 40% shooting 3, 53% from 2. I think that's an underrated thing people didn't realize, but he was so good attacking the basket and getting his floater going. When Darius is healthy, like, what do you expect more of the same? Do you expect some kind of evolution in his game? Like, what do you expect from Darius when he does get on the court?
I would expect the same. I mean, we've seen this fringe all-star player for a couple of years now, and it doesn't seem to really matter who's around him. He still is able to find ways to contribute to this team, whether it is being the elite facilitator, whether it is having to be the clutch time scorer, or, being the guy to shoot all the free throws and technical free throws because he has the highest percentage. So I kind of expect the same. I do hope that with this toe surgery that we see that quick pivot, kind of what we were missing at the end of the last season because of the injury, that we see that quick pivot, cutting, that floater game. I mean, I hope we start seeing that stuff more, or back to form when he comes back.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the hope is I'm sure they'll play the injury slow, and I think Darius kind of only knows one way to play. I mean, he was playing as much as he could like that in the playoffs when he was on the bum toe, right? So I would expect that too. I mean, I don't have a ton of critiques on Darius, because I thought he overall had a fantastic season, a career season last year. Like, if there's one thing, and you can nitpick a lot of guys for this, but like, I did think he had a little bit of consistency problems, particularly he fell into like a couple of long stretches where he was just, his numbers just plummeted. It was really in that second half of the season. I went back and looked, and there was like one 8-game stretch and another like 9-game stretch where he's averaging like 11 points and 4 assists, and just don't know that if he was already dealing with an injury or something, or it was just for whatever reason. But I mean, again, when you talk about silver linings, maybe he was wearing down towards the end of the year. Maybe it was a fatigue thing because all of his struggles did come the last couple months of the year. So like if I did have one nitpick with Darius, it would simply be that. And the other thing, and this isn't a critique, is something that they did so well. I just don't think they did enough of towards the end of the season. I want to see him getting back to doing that pick and roll with JA and Mobley and hitting them on the roll, right? They were so good at that at the start of the season. They obviously continue to do the pick and rolls, but it seemed like the roll part and the dump offs were not there nearly as much at the end of the year. And that's not just on Garland, obviously, but I think could be such a strength for the Cavs. And it was such a strength that part of the season last year. I want to see him definitely get back to running that pick and roll beautifully as he often does, but also being able to set up the big guys as he did so well to start the year last year.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is, like you said, it's not totally up to him. It also calls for what the coach is calling for and the plays are outlined of. Another piece of that kind of goes along with that I hope either improves or maybe Kenny schemes to improve is knowing when Darius Garland is getting picked out defensively and being able to scheme around that, being vocal and, hey, switch off, switch on, whatever it may be. Not to say he's a bad defender. He's just an undersized guard. And, when you get larger wings on you like a Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown or Tyrese Halliburton, those guys are going to pick on you. For his own terms, because he said that with Tyler Hero. So
right.
I hope that's something that he's able to see happening and be vocal in his, hey, switch on, switch off, whatever it may be, or Kenny Atkinson's able to game plan around that as well. I think that'll help and not saying the Cavs are a bad defensive team. That's not it at all. But if you have one guy that's getting picked on, that doesn't help showing that Evan Mobley is the best defender in the world. It's showing that you have kind of these hard-nosed defensive guys if they're targeting one of them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I agree. I'd put it more on the coaches than on Darius because this is the team that, the front office and the coaching staff built that is extremely talented and a little of an odd fit in certain areas. And if you're going to go with kind of just getting so much talent on the roster and then working through kind of the kinks of it not fitting perfectly, then you gotta scheme around that, right? And they did offensively. That you can't have any complaints about the offensive scheme. At least in the regular season last year, it was phenomenal. They're the best offensive team in the league. Maybe there is a way to be a little bit more strategic defensively. I mean, they went to zone. They didn't hesitate to go to zone at times last year. I don't know if that's the answer or something else, but yeah, I agree. I would put it on Kenny and the staff that you can't let Darius get picked on consistently. Occasionally it's going to happen. Mismatches happen in the NBA, but you have to be better about, putting your team in an advantageous matchup, whether that's on offense or defense.
Yeah. And we saw not even just getting picked on defensively and the other team getting to score, but we saw that cause Darius Garland to get into foul trouble. And then we don't get Darius Garland for long stretches of the game where we probably would like to have that facilitator in there helping out the offense a bit more. And probably to your point where it felt like he would have these spurts of great, awful, whatever. I think a good piece of that is not getting to play because he's in foul trouble, and there's the psyche around that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it got a little bit better as the season went on. It happened a lot at the beginning of the season, but yeah, you're right. Randomly, your point guard shouldn't be in foul trouble consistently. It should be a very odd thing if he gets in foul trouble in the NBA. So that is something I would look to as well and say if he's getting in foul trouble with any consistency, that's something you have to game plan better for, because Darius, obviously he commits silly fouls, but I think most of the time he commits fouls because he's frankly just in a bad position defensively. And that's his retort for whatever, to try and stop somebody.
No doubt. So I think that we expect Garland to get back and kind of plug right back into this team. I hope we see a lot of vintage Garland. Same thing with Strus. I hope when we get him back, it's kind of just plugs right in like he kind of did this past season. I'm so excited for NBA to come back. We're inching ever closer. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please follow us on all of our social media platforms. Like, subscribe on YouTube. We're really trying to grow the YouTube channel as much as possible, and be on the lookout for kind of some fun stuff that we're coming up with as we get closer to this season. And man, I can't wait. I can't wait for basketball season to get back already.
It's almost here. It's almost here.
So for that, he's Kevin Lynch. I'm Skylar Wepker. And as always,
go Cavs.